come play, get better at poker, work on the things you need to work on, sharpen your technical skills. I don't know about belong here, but you have a place here. It won't take you much to get to this level.
It seems like you did like a lot of different things in poker, and then you settled on Tritons, and that was really a big part of your focus in poker as of for a while. I read for a couple of years now. Do I have that right? And can you tell me is there something specific about the Tritons that you like so much?
Yeah, I kind of felt a crossroads might be overstating it, but a couple of years ago, I wasn't exactly sure what my place was in poker. I was playing a private game in Florida that was really good up until COVID. Stopped playing during COVID, and that was a period where the online games were really soft, and a lot of players got a lot better because you're locked in and there's not much to do. But that's when I started coaching a lot, which in some senses made me a better player in some ways, but I wasn't playing online. And so I kind of fell behind some players that I thought maybe I was ahead of up until that point. And, between that and playing in a private game, my game wasn't really getting sharper for the most part. And I think ego wise, I wasn't too happy with my new place in the poker world and maybe not too ready to accept that, whatever level I was at had fallen a little bit because of people who had risen past me. And with a reluctance to get into solvers in any kind of meaningful way, that trajectory was looking pretty bad for me for a while. And so I was kind of thinking about my next step. And I wasn't exactly forced into a decision because I still had coaching and good coaching business that I enjoyed. But Nick Petrangelo is a good friend of mine, and he had a very different trajectory from me, where he always wanted to play in the toughest games and be one of the best tournament players in the world. And he did that. But along the way, he was kind of always, poking at me like, come play, get better at poker, work on the things you need to work on, sharpen your technical skills. I don't know about belong here, but you have a place here. It won't take you much to get to this level. You can be here and it won't take all that much work just sharpening up, technical skills. Like look at a pre-flop chart or two, get, a little better with some basic stuff that's, more in the realm of memorization as opposed to necessarily theory.
I would think tough games would take more than that to beat, but what do I know? Um, I don't know what
Yeah.
games referring to.
Yeah, he was talking about the biggest buy-in tournaments, which it's interesting because it doesn't mean you're going to be a top 10 player, but because the buy-ins are so big, you don't need to have a very high ROI to be finding yourself with a pretty good hourly, even if you're selling. So I think that was his pitch, was not that it was going to take me less than, let's say, 100 hours of work to be a top 10 player in the world, but that it wouldn't take all that much work for me to be profiting in those games. And I don't think that's Nick's opinion, just generally speaking, of anyone who's been playing for a while. He kind of knows my process and my poker brain intimately. And that was his opinion based on, the time we've spent together talking strategy.
Okay, okay. Yeah, I guess it can make sense. I guess the Tritons are soft enough where there's quite a few players that can be profitable in them. I wasn't. I played them a decent amount. It seemed like they kept getting better and better for a while. At least we know when they included Vietnam and all these other crazy places. Well, maybe not so crazy like Korea and places like that. Um, yeah, I mean, I could see someone. I guess it's possible to make put a focus on those specifically. I don't know if that's really a way of becoming a pro. I do always advocate actually for the people who are trying to make money to find like where to focus on to make the money and then just like own in on that. So, I mean, yeah, I guess Tritons could be the thing. I like the Tritons quite a bit, even though I don't play them that much. But I have other things I have to do. So, I guess it's an
Yeah.
option for many people for from the who are like trying to make like real money from poker and have succeeded at like mid stakes or whatever. I guess that's like a potential route for people to go. Or what do you think?
I think Triton specifically, when you talk about how you decide you want to spend your time, it's not just an equity calculation, I think, for both of us. And the thing about Triton is I just have so much fun there. They treat you so well. You're not overloaded. I think one of the things about the tournament series that has the different tournament series that exist that's kind of kept me from being a guy who would travel around for a full year is the big crowds. I just don't like being around a ton of people at once. I find it kind of socially taxing. I'm
Hmm.
someone who likes to talk at the table, but away from the table, I really like to be alone and have my headphones in. I don't want to talk hands in between 2-hour periods on that 15-minute break. And when you're at World Series, which don't get me wrong, I'll be out there and I'm going to play, a cluster of tournaments. But I find it very taxing walking in those long hallways and recognizing 50 people that you feel compelled to head nod to or fist bump, or maybe if it's been a while and you were close with them once, stop and, have a little bit of a catch up. All of those interactions I would enjoy in isolation, but when they compound and you've just got dozens and dozens of these day after day, it kind of takes something that's really nice, socializing with old friends or acquaintances, and turns it into a really taxing chore. And Triton just doesn't have that. You run into like 3 dozen people who all kind of understand the same thing, and I just find it so much. Um, I don't know if comforting is the word. Just it's much more relaxing mentally for me.
I will say the Triton tournaments. Shout out to Triton; they're one of the best run tournaments that are around. So there is that, and yeah, I guess you don't. Yeah, you deal with a smaller crowd that maybe you know a little bit better. So that's a plus too. Personally, when I go to Vegas, I'm actually like a crazy introvert. I just work and I like can tune out the crowds, which is a weird surprise for me. And I mean, I don't mind to do media promotion, all that shit. But I wonder if it'd be interesting to see how the poker players respond in general to the whole craziness of Las Vegas, or rather the tournaments. Just because I suspect that a lot of the poker players are introverts, but I can't prove it. That being said, there are some personality tests that some back. Well, there's one backing group in general that I know uses like some personality tests to test like which players are good for poker, and I wondered if like maybe introversion is one of those key those traits. So, is your main income from Triton, or is it from? Would you say it's? Do you make a significant portion from coaching as well, or like something else?
It's really shifted all throughout my career. I started off as a heads up sit and go player. When I was 18, that was my income for, let's say, 6 years. But I also binked second in a WPT when I was 21. So that was a big influx.
Yeah, I read about that. Congrats, 21, second WPT, not pretty decent.
Yeah, yeah, that was a real shot in the arm right away. Maybe not right away. I'd been professional for 3 years, but it was the beginning of playing live tournaments for me. Uh,
Hmm.
I recognized right away that I wasn't the guy who wanted to travel around and play all the WPTs, as much fun as they were. I didn't want to put the time into going to all these different places, and it's kind of a homebody. And then, but it did give me some room to back other players, which, naturally backing players and having an investment in them, you want them to play better. So I began coaching as well. And I would say around Black Friday, the games got a lot tougher, and I started to again drop in terms of status for where I was in the heads up world. And that was mainly due to HUDs and a change in the structure. We went from non turbo heads up sit and goes to turbo sit and goes to hyper turbos, which really emphasized a different skill set. And as someone who didn't collect data, I just typed my own notes, which was no longer sufficient when you're talking about a game that's heavily pre-flop. And I watched myself just get worse and worse and didn't love it. And my love for the game, not coincidentally, began to wane. But I still wanted to make money in poker and still identified as a poker something. And so backing and some degree of coaching was my main income for a while there. And then I moved to Florida, and it was just pure luck that I fell into a really good private game. That was my income for a few years, primarily with some coaching on the side. And then, yeah, when COVID hit, coaching really dialed up for me in a bigger way. And if I were to say, like, equity wise, I would guess that live tournaments and coaching are probably about equal, if I had to like guesstimate. But of course, live tournaments are so variable. I could, lose 1.5 on the year. That would be a very reasonable, run out, or make 3 mil or whatever. Whereas the coaching is a more steady income. But I think the equities are relatively similar.
Okay, that's a fair point. Yeah, I mean, if you get proficient enough, you can make decent money from coaching. Uh, it's no secret. I was curious though, just because I also a big topic that I personally like to talk about is a certain version of game selection, more like game choice, you can say, or like going into looking for the right kinds of markets of games. But that can also, I mean, on that kind of topic, can be okay. Maybe there's some other way to make money for other players. So what I mean by that is, if you find like a pool of soft games on an online site that is a lot softer than another pool for whatever reason, it makes a lot of sense to focus on that pool, and like can like make big differences to players' bottom lines and things like that. Uh, and I found that focusing on stuff like that, especially when you like consider all your live options and even like coaching options, what can really show where one can make money, because poker, it can be very volatile, of course. So it was interesting to see like how your way of making money shifted a lot, and you kept adapting based off of like whatever your personal skill set was and how people were playing in those games. Like apparently hypercent goes were no longer good um, after a certain amount of time. And yeah, it's just interesting to see how variable your way of changing and then ending up in Triton's was. Yeah, so congrats on being a bit of an example in that department, just because I've done a bit of that myself. I shifted a lot based off of where I could personally make money in my career. And that was one of the big reasons why I like ended up making money, was I just kept looking for many different like pockets of value, and I got a bit lucky in a lot of spots too. Good job selecting games and finding where the value's at.
I think some of it, something that's not ancillary to hunting down the best EV, is just following what you actually enjoy, which may be making a third as much money doing something completely outside of poker. And I know that personally, I need to do something different. I cannot imagine that I will ever have a 10-year period again where I'm doing the same thing. I think heads up, sit and goes is about as long as I'll ever remain in one area. And even that, I was
Mm-hmm.
playing tournaments on the side and coaching as well. So to say I was just playing heads up, sit and goes would not be accurate. But some of this positive EV hunt, like for instance, the private game in Florida, it was pure luck. I didn't really put work into hunting down my best hourly. It fell in my lap. I could see myself have going down many different routes. At the time, I was really just trying to get good at golf, and it had nothing to do with making money. It was just a hobby. And I looked on Bravo and found a 25-50 game. I showed up. It was 25-51. I played pretty crazy, and they said, "We love you, keep playing with us," and that ended up being good. So I don't want to take too much credit because I do have some friends in poker who I think are phenomenal at this, that they have just adapted year after year, followed the strategies that you need to do to make money in this new, this new era, and they've moved from this app game to that live game, or they've gone and grinded in Macau for long periods. Like that was something that I think was told to me multiple times that would be a good place for me to make money. And I just realized, regardless, I probably need to be paid like 6 times whatever my real at home hourly looked like to do it based on the lifestyle that I heard. So, I think that one thing, because poker players, we all speak the same language around EV. Like, there's no online tournament player who plays Wednesdays and Thursdays but skips Sunday. Like, that's not really a thing because you follow the EV. But I think what can get lost in that sometimes is following what you actually enjoy doing. And, for example, I think there are probably some players who are stuck in a private game atmosphere because they make so much money at it, but they just can't walk away from that hourly, even though maybe they would have a lot more fun making a fraction of that as an online tournament player or somebody traveling the WPT circuit or something.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, it's really kind of dependent on the person a lot, and yeah, it'd be interesting to. There might be some kind of way to map out enjoyment versus money being made. Yeah, I totally. I'm with you with this Macau stuff. I've done the Macau grind a bit, 30-hour sessions and stuff like that. But then I calculated the money. I was like, you know what? Maybe this is worth it. Uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, I make decisions a bit like that as well. The Tritons are high on the enjoyment list. Are you referring especially to the Tritons or to something else? Is there? Oh, okay, okay. Just
I
making sure.
wasn't thinking of Triton when I was on that little rant, but Triton really checks that box for me where the equity can continue to go down and I'll keep showing up for quite some time, just because of all of these secondary things like just playing tennis with a lot of friends every day, seeing people that I really enjoy. It just has like all these positive summer camp vibes that I really dig. And, a couple times a year, it just feels like the vacation. Like, I'm not a guy who really likes vacation. And Triton, this might be sacrilege to some of the guys who work a lot harder than me, but for me, it's like vacation. Even when I'm whiffing, it sucks. It's not fun to lose, but it's my favorite kind of poker. I love that you have the app. And so, like, being on your phone at the table is actually really plus EV, like trying to track all the hands that different players you're not familiar with are playing. One of my negatives with playing live poker is I just feel like it's not stimulating enough most of the time. There's not really productive things that you can do with your brain. There are productive things, but I don't find that the cost benefit is enough where I want to really focus on every hand, especially reg versus reg hands between two people I know.
Well,
And so
you're
I get kind of
you're one of the
bored.
few people. You're one of the few people that kind of agree with me. I get so much shit for not focusing playing live.